I'm Kristen Stone King. My pronouns are she, her, and I serve as chair of the Conference Council on Finance and Administration and pastor at Epworth United Methodist Church in Berkeley. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'll be sharing with you about how we're doing financially, as well as some background and context to the allocation of the Boy Scouts of America legal settlement. And I'll also share with you our proposed budget for 2024. The scripture on which our annual conference theme is based this year proclaims, "Behold, I am doing a new thing." But this morning, I want to begin by sharing with you the same thing that I've been sharing with you for the last 6 years. So, but you know what it is. You know what it is, but what is new is that I'm about to share with you the reality that this has become our culture. So yes, that's right. For 6 years in a row, we've fulfilled all of our budgetary obligations, including paying our general and jurisdictional apportionments in full. 100%. 6 years in a row. Now, you've probably heard the phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yep. It means that we can have the most beautiful, brilliant conference strategy, but if it isn't supported by the culture, it will not succeed. This phrase speaks to the power of culture and how difficult it is to change culture. But our culture around connectional giving has changed. You are witnesses to a new thing. 1 year of giving 100% might be a fluke. 2 years in a row might be lucky. But 6 years in a row shows that we do have a new culture. We are living in a new culture, from giving to living. You are witnesses to a new thing. In this new culture, we know that numbers are just symbols. Numbers are just symbols. These symbols bear witness to our commitment to our connection and our relationships with each other. These symbols bear witness to the fullness of our hearts and our hope that we can be healing agents in the world through the mission and the ministry of the United Methodist Church. We are making a statement that we are in this together, not just with each other, but across the nation and across the globe. In a time when both our national and denominational news focuses on polarizations and divisions, you are demonstrating what it means to be a part of one body, committed, hopeful, healing, faithful. Thank you, Cal Nevada. Thank you. When culture is alive and aligned with our purpose as Christians, we're partners with God in doing new things. And these new things are evidenced in renewed focus, in which a culture of relationship and commitment aligns us toward clarifying our vision and mission. And after lunch, you will hear from the core team who have done amazing work to help us set a new direction and articulate a new mission and ministry as an annual conference. And when we are committed in our culture, we experience renewed connection. And we know we are all in this together. We know that, to paraphrase Wesley and also Bishop Dick from yesterday in clergy session, though we may not think exactly alike, we can love alike. We can unite and be of one heart, keeping the main thing the main thing. And finally, when culture is aligned with purpose, we witness effectiveness. When we are focused and when we're working together, we're able to be more effective as we live and we labor for the world that Jesus showed us was possible. And so I'd like to lift up now the churches that gave 100% of their tithe in 2022. So if you're part of one of these churches, as each slide comes up by district, I ask you to stand. So from the Bay District, we had 23 churches who gave 100% of their tithe. Stand up, Bay District. And from the Central Valley, we had 40 churches who gave 100% of their tithe. Stand up, Central Valley. And from the El Camino District, we had 35 churches that gave 100% of their tithe. Stand up, El Camino. From the Great Northern churches, we have 35 churches that gave 100% of their tithes. Stand up, Great Northern. And from the Los Rios districts, 28 churches gave 100% of their tithe. Thank you to all of you, to your pastors, to your people. And at the same time, what I really want to emphasize is that when we achieve 100% of giving to our jurisdictional and general church ministries, it's a celebration for all of us. No single church that was able to give 100% could have achieved alone what we have achieved as an annual conference. In fact, California and Nevada was one of only 6 annual conferences and 2 missionary conferences that gave 100% to general and jurisdictional apportionments last year. You did that. You all did that. Thank you. Your CFA works throughout the year to give guidance and leadership to the annual conference in the areas of finance and administration. And we do this through our whole body as a council, and we also work through a number of subcommittees. So I want to make sure you know kind of how we're organized and who is leading these pieces. Unju Myung leads our insurance subcommittee. And as I call your name, if you would stand, please. Gail Sherman leads our personnel subcommittee. Christy Ola is not the chair of the audit subcommittee, but I can tell you we kind of rely on her like a chair. She makes sure that our conference financial picture is thoroughly reviewed every year and that we're attending to all of the details and review of where we are in the big picture. Quintisha Davis-Wiles leads our subcommittee on racial justice, and you may recall that a couple of years ago, we made a commitment to invest some of our liquid cash in the largest Black-owned bank in the United States, and we currently still have $250,000 invested there. And Diane Knudsen resources, supports, and leads the council as our conference treasurer. Thanks for joining me and thanking them in their faithful service. For the last 6 years, I've been grateful to serve with this amazing group of people and engage in purposeful work. And now I'm preparing to take a new role, and I couldn't be more excited about the new leadership coming forward on your Council of Finance and Administration. Serving for 7 years on CFA, Burke Owens began as our secretary, and then 2 years ago, he was elected as our vice chair for CFA. The Book of Discipline gives CFA the responsibility of electing its own leadership, and so this week, Burke was voted in as our new chair. And working with Burke as the new vice chair, since that role was empty once we elected him as chair, Kelly Ratliff, who has been serving on CFA after her retirement from UC Davis as the Vice Chancellor of Finance, Operations, and Administration, is coming on as your Vice Chair of Council on Finance and Administration. In September 2022, CFA did a new thing by meeting in a 2-day retreat at the Mercy Center in Burlingame. The longer, relaxed setting allowed us to tackle some complex issues and do some long-term planning. And one of the issues we wrestled with during the retreat was California, Nevada's portion of the settlement negotiated between survivors of abuse in the Boy Scouts of America and the churches who hosted or chartered troops in which abuse took place. The settlement named several commitments from the United Methodist Church and each annual conference toward the goal of healing and restoration. These commitments included financial compensation and other healing actions. As connectional people of faith, we know that healing happens in relationship. Following Jesus, thriving in community, healing the world. Financial compensation will be achieved through the establishment of a $30 million BSA Survivors Trust Fund. And California, Nevada's share of this is $572,264, which relates to claims in 38 churches. CFA really struggled with how to allocate our share of this settlement. There were many possible scenarios. We broke into small groups for discernment, and then each group presented where they landed with the large group, and then we agreed to make a final decision after a good night's sleep. We felt the weight of the harm that had occurred, but also the potential to further restoration and justice and healing. In the morning, there was consensus that though there are only 38 churches with claims, we are all in this together. Each of us, in each of our churches, practice ministry with faith and trust, and sometimes that trust is broken. We are connected as Christians, as United Methodists, and as members of this annual conference. CFA came to the following consensus on how to cover California, Nevada's share of the financial settlement. First, as a demonstration of our connectionalism through the annual conference, half of the settlement amount, $286,132, will be covered through annual conference funds. Next, as a demonstration of the real harm that has occurred, each church with a claim will cover $2,000 of the settlement. And finally, as a demonstration of our solidarity with each other, all the churches in the annual conference are asked to cover $750 of the settlement. The survivors were clear that their primary goal was not financial compensation, but healing and prevention of further harm in the future. And so as part of the settlement, each annual conference also commits to working with churches to ensure safe gatherings and ministry safe policies are in place and up to date, running a series of articles to educate in collaboration with the BSA UMC leadership team, and establishing a team of leaders to listen to survivors' stories for healing and for learning. As people of faith, we believe that harm can be healed. God is always doing a new thing. The retreat also gave us the opportunity to look at long-term trends in our giving patterns. And if you'll recall in my report in 2021, remember that one? 2 years ago, remember that one? Well, anyway, this slide was in that report. And I predicted that in 2022, our tithing would be on the upside of a V-shaped recovery curve as we continued to climb out of the pandemic. Well, as it turns out, when we got to the end of 2022, the trend line didn't look like a V. It looked like this. In 2019, actual tithe giving was $5.75 million, And then 2020's tithe giving dipped to $5.138 million. That was predictable. And then in 2021, we began to see recovery, and total tithing was $5.481 million, predictable. But in 2022, tithing dipped again to $5.262 million. Why is this? What happened to our recovery curve? Well, we believe this is due to a confluence of factors. First, in 2020 and 2021, many churches had additional income through the Payroll Protection Program. And second, just like our broader communities and our businesses, inflation in salaries and energy costs and supplies can require our churches to spend a larger percentage of their income on those expenses, sometimes causing shortfalls when it comes to the conference tithe. And at the same time, our givers are facing the same inflation. So some churches that had building rental income also have not seen those renters return. So those are the factors we think impacted the curve that we landed with at the end of 2022. And so for the remainder of 2023, I want to really encourage you to make sure that your church is looking into the Employee Retention Credit Program. It's similar to the Payroll Protection Program. The likelihood is that your church does qualify, and this is a program that can provide additional support during this time. Diane Knudsen led a training and webinar in February on this program, and the video is still on the conference website. And if you have questions or if you need any assistance, please reach out to Diane or me or to your superintendent, and we'd be happy to help you make sure that you can apply and receive additional funds in 2023 through the ERC program. All right, now we come to the moment you've all been waiting for, the proposed budget for 2024. So I know you can't see that very well, but this is item 1 in your legislative packet. So that's a better way to look at the detail. It can be found on pages 3 through 7. And as a reminder, each year CFA works within the standing rule that caps projected spending at 10% of the total income of all churches in the previous year. And in 2022, year-end reports and estimates based on historical data from churches that didn't report totaled $55.9 million. So that gives us a cap for our 2024 budget of $5.59 million. So if we get there, that curve will again start to turn and come up. This year, our projected tithe income and expenses are $5.85 million. So as you can see, we have less to work with in projected tithing income as we head into 2024. To deal with this, we've reduced spending in the Equitable Compensation Fund by $75,000. We've reduced insurance by $45,000, a projection that we arrived at collaboratively with the Board of Pensions, who is sharing some of that cost with their reserves. And we've trimmed some other administrative costs. Additionally, we do anticipate needing to draw from our reserves to fully fund our apportionments for next year. The total conference spending plan each year always anticipates a number of income sources, of which tithing is always only one. And since 2018, we've been presenting a budget to you in the proposal that shows both the tithing income and the income drawn from these various sources that are dedicated to particular ministries. Some of them have their own internal income mechanisms, like registrations and fees. And those are shown on the legislation with the code, the letter code. So you can match where we're drawing from these funds with that code. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or any member of CFA. We're projecting some decreases from those sources too, largely due to fewer new church starts being funded for the coming cycle. Next year's budget projects total spending of $7,979,841, a decrease of $815,210 over spending projected for this year. When I think about our actual curve, the curve that you saw in the last slide, I realize that instead of looking like a V, it really looks like a wave. So what I realized, God is calling us to ride this wave. And or if you're in clergy session yesterday, we're being called to fly loose in this turbulence. And what's important to realize is that God is doing a new thing, and it's up to us to perceive it. The struggles related to the pandemic are opening up to a renewal in our denomination. And though one might assume that individual church disaffiliations and closures is a significant factor in our financial picture, in California, Nevada, it's actually not a significant impact. The dynamics that we're having are much broader than those two issues of disaffiliations and closures. Also, what we do know is that GCFA has proposed legislation for next year's General Conference in Charlotte that will reduce Cal Nevada's general and jurisdictional apportionments by several $100,000. So it's likely that legislation will pass. It was proposed for 2020, and many annual conferences started to count on it in their budgeting process. We did not. But I'm hopeful that it will pass, and I think the gap that we're experiencing now will be addressed in large part by the shift in the change in apportionments from GCFA. As we continue to stabilize and recover after this period of turbulence that we've been through, these reductions in expenses should lead to an even more robust financial picture for California, Nevada. We'll return to the budget recommendation tomorrow afternoon, and if you have particular questions, feel free to reach out to me between now and then. You can also ask them at that time from the floor for a discourse about our budget proposal. And I think we have a special guest. Is that right, Diane? Okay, we don't have a special guest. So I want to just close by saying thank you, Cal Nevada. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to serve as your Council on Finance and Administration Chair for the last 6 years. I'm so proud of what we've accomplished together. We are witnesses to a new thing. Thank you.
Thank you.